What's up, guys? So today I'm going to be telling you the story of probably the most ambitious thing I've ever done. It was like the craziest road trip you could imagine, and it was all done in like 2 weeks. So the story starts in high school. Me and a few of my buddies were in gym class and we were talking about what we wanted to do that summer, and someone brought up the idea of a road trip. And originally we were like, oh yeah, cool idea, it'll never happen. But we were thinking about it, and I was like, why don't we just do it? We could always do a road trip. I mean, there's nothing really stopping us. And when we thought about it like that, we realized it was more feasible than we had ever imagined. The only thing that was really stopping us was our parents, and we could easily, talk them into it. And if not, we could always just get in the car and drive away. So our first destination was Chicago, and I got in the car around 9 in the morning. I drove to each of my friends' houses, picked them each up. They said goodbye to their families. I had said goodbye to my family earlier that morning. And we headed west without any real destination in mind. We knew we wanted to get to Chicago eventually, but we weren't sure how long it would take. We hadn't exactly planned that far ahead. So we just started driving west. And I drove out across New Jersey, crossed into Pennsylvania, and I was still feeling good, so I kept driving. And I drove through Pennsylvania into Ohio, felt great, continued on into Ohio, kept feeling good, so I drove all the way across Ohio into Indiana. And it was starting to get dark, and we didn't want to go into Chicago since we didn't have plans for that night. So we got to this little town called Elkhart, Indiana, and we got off at the toll booth, and we were going to look for a place to stay. And we had just gotten off the highway when I realized that we hadn't gotten gas in a while. I looked at the gas gauge, and we had 6 miles left. There was almost no gas in the car, and we looked it up. The nearest KOA stands for Campsite of America. It's like a cheap lodging area where you can park your car and camp in tents or RVs. The nearest one was like 10 miles away, and we only had 6 miles to go as far as gas went. So it was really concerning. Like, I was really freaking out. This was the first night and things were already going wrong. We pulled into a gas station. It was self-serve, something we don't have in New Jersey. I swiped my card and it wouldn't work. The gas station was closed for the night, and apparently they had turned off the pumps. We drove to the next gas station, 2 miles to go. This time, again, there was no attendant. I swiped the card, click, thank God it worked. I was able to fuel up the car. We put in a few dollars and drove to the campsite. When we got to the campsite, we set up for the night, hit the hay. It was right by train tracks, so all night we kept hearing trains going by. No one slept very well. And it poured rain, heavy, heavy rain, thunder. But we just felt great to be out of our small town, Kinnelon. We were away from home, on the road, living the dream. So, long story short, the first day was a mess. On the way into Chicago, we broke our windshield. And on the last day in Chicago, we walked into this really sketchy McDonald's, and we basically almost got shot. There was a bunch of cops there in plain clothes, but with bulletproof vests and tags. And there was, some gang or something there. And all of a sudden, they told us to get out of the restaurant, and the cashiers went behind the counter. And we don't know what happened, but they were yelling. The one guy was like, "My homie did it. I didn't do it. My homie did it." And we just ran out of there before we heard what his homie did. But after that, we basically had a pretty good, smooth sailing trip all the way to the West Coast. So from Chicago, we drove west to Denver, Colorado in basically one day. We got up super early, left the city. I had a bit of a hard time driving out of the city. I'm not great with city driving, but we made it to Denver. And there was this one part that I remember very vividly. We were able to get out on Route 80 because it was in the middle of the night and we were in the middle of nowhere on the Nebraska-Colorado border. And basically it was so quiet, there were no cars, and you could just go out to the highway and lay down starfish style in the middle. And my friends and I did that and took pictures, and we thought that was just the coolest thing. And we continued on to Boulder, Colorado, where we woke up in the morning to just the most stunning view of the mountains. And we ended up spending the whole day hiking through the mountains, looking over the University of Boulder, Colorado. It was just beautiful, and I really loved Colorado. So the next day we drove to the trailhead at Gray's and Torrey's Peak, and this was maybe the highlight of the trip, at least for me. It felt like an accomplishment to me to climb 2 of the 14ers. Those are the mountains that are above 14,000 feet in Colorado. And this was probably the hardest climb I ever did. This is where the second near-death experience came in. So me and my friend Kyle were walking up a little ahead of my friend Chris and Teo when Kyle started slipping down the mountain. And I guess I took a picture. I don't even remember it, but I found the picture later. And in all the excitement, I guess I snapped a photo of this happening. My friend Chris and my friend Teo grabbed Kyle quickly before he slid down the snow on the mountain and saved him. And that was really scary. And we continued to the top, but I was getting really bad altitude sickness. And by the time we were almost to the peak of the mountain, I was so dizzy and out of it that I started taking like my layers off, even though it was really cold. And then it was getting really hot later on. I was putting layers on because I was cold. And I was dizzy and confused, and it was really a mess. We got back to the trailhead. So after we got off the mountain, we continued across Colorado into Arches National Park in Utah. We spent a day in Moab, and then we basically took a vote because we didn't know whether we wanted to do Northern California or Southern California, and Northern California won. So we drove to San Francisco. We did a couple days there, and we swam in the water, and it was really crazy just how far we had driven. Just 4 days before, we had been in New Jersey, and now we were in California, and we drove there. Just crazy to me. And this was really like the coolest part of the trip. It was like a miserable rainy day, but we had gotten all the way across the country, and we decided we were just going to go for it. And we put on bathing suits and jumped into the Pacific Ocean. And that was like basically, that marked like the furthest part of the trip. And it was really cool. We got back in the car, we started driving down the coast, and we came back through the Grand Canyon. I had been to the Grand Canyon before, but it was really cool. We ended up hiking down quite a ways, and we saw these big animals. They were elk, and they would drink from the fountain that was there for hikers. And there were actually 2 spigots on the fountain, and I went to one and drank from it while the elk drank from the other. And that was really cool. All these people started taking pictures of us and stuff, and a lot of other people ended up doing it. And then from there, we drove onward back east until we got to Oklahoma. And we went to Cadillac Ranch in Texas, which was awesome. It was all these cars in the ground with spray paint. We got to spray paint on them ourselves. And in Oklahoma, it was pouring rain, hailing really heavily, and it was just all around terrible weather. And my friend Kyle all of a sudden goes, "Oh shit. Oh shit." And we're like, "Kyle, what's wrong?" And he realized he had left his camera at Cadillac Ranch in Texas. So we were basically an hour away. We were by the Oklahoma border, and we had to drive all the way back to Cadillac Ranch in like Amarillo, Texas. And luckily, we made it like alive. Sadly, the camera was gone when we got there. Kyle ran out through the pouring rain and hail, looked around frantically, didn't find it, and sadly came back to the car. So we had wasted a couple hours. We made it to Oklahoma City. We spent the night, got up in the morning, and drove to Memphis. And Memphis was really cool. We got cool barbecue, good food and stuff, and then we went on to Nashville, where we celebrated the 4th of July. It was actually the biggest fireworks show in the United States, if not the world. And then we drove to Virginia Beach before returning home. And this was probably the coolest trip I ever did, partially because of just all the stuff we did, and partially because everyone said we couldn't do it, and in the end we did it. And because I enjoyed the trip so much last year, I decided to organize another one for this summer. So 3 of my friends and I are going, maybe 4 of my friends, and we're going to be documenting the whole thing, and I'm going to make sure to upload a daily vlog on that trip. And it's just, I can't wait to give you guys like the real perspective. On this trip, it was hard to tell the story because I didn't have a lot of footage, but this time we go, this summer, we're doing Canada, United States, and Mexico, and we're going to get really cool pictures and video, and I'm going to be uploading daily vlogs, and hopefully we will survive the trip and make it back alive. Alright, thanks for listening, guys. That's the story of the most ambitious road trip I ever did.